Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Just Daf It. Daf Yomi Shir. We're learning Kesubos Daf Mem Gimel number 43. We have a great shir for you today. We'll be discussing the main topic. We'll be discussing today is whether a daughter who her father died. She has brothers. Brothers have to feed her. That's the halacha. She doesn't get inheritance. Brothers have to support her. If she gets a job, right? Who do her wages go? She keeps her wages, or they go to the brother? That is big machlokas hamoraim in the Gemara. We're going to see who the halacha is like. Try to pick a side right now and see if you're right. Do the brothers get her wages or not? And then in Ian with Ben Sion, we're going to discuss this issue further, the underlying machlokas between these hamoraim. Let's get started. The bottom of Mem Beis on Beis 42b. We were in a discussion yesterday, really about our Mishnah, that Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan have a machlokes about whether if there's a psak din in Beis Din, or at least I said in Iyot Ben Si, at least a hamada b'din, the trial came to court, it came in front of a court. So does that consider the knas turning into mammon or not? What the nafkamina being that if the father were to die before the collection of the money happens to the father's estate, who would inherit it? Would the daughter inherit it? The onus and pito and the boshes and gam, with the boshes and gam, automatically everyone agrees it's money. Actually, we'll see it's machlokas. All these different payments, where they go directly to the daughter if it wasn't collected, or they go to the sons. The Rabbanans say no, it already goes to the sons. The Rosh Hashanah says until the gavia, until the collection, if the father didn't collect the money, it doesn't belong to him. It would go to the daughters. Rosh Hashanah says. So we had a problem with Rosh Hashanah about a korban shvua. Seemingly he agrees there would be a korban shvua even if it was merely brought to court. So we're on the bottom, about 8 lines from the bottom. Asive, 7 lines. Asive Rosh Shimon Poter She'ena Mashalom Knas Al Piatzmo. This is a Mishnah from Shvua, so I mentioned yesterday. Rosh Shimon exempts from a korban shvua because it's called a knas. Time with the Amud B'din. The reason is because it wasn't brought in front of a court. Amud B'din. However, if it was brought in front of a court, the Mashalom Al Piatzmo, right, you can't exempt yourself. Moda b'knas pater, but the point that it's brought in front of Beis Din, we explained yesterday in Ben Sion, once it's brought to court already, even if there was no psak down on this, you can't say moda b'knas pater, so it would be considered mammon according to Rabbi Shimon. Right, which we said according to Rabbi Shimon wouldn't make any sense. So the Gemara says Rabbi Shimon wasn't saying his own shita. He was just saying he was trying to get the Rabbanan to admit to him at least partially. Ladidi, according to me, even if it came in front of Beis Din, it's still called a knas. It was ikaru a knas. It was really a knas. So even though it came in front of Beis Din, now it's considered mammon in some regards. It's still no korban shvua because, like we explained yesterday, it started off as a knas. From the pasuk v'chichesh ela ledidchu, according to you, oduli mia, at least admit me hechad law b'din, where it wasn't brought in front of a court yet. The chigatava knas katava. Right now it's a knas because if he moda the knas, he moda the pitoy or the onus, he would pater himself through the knas. Moda knas pater. Tafnim gilman aleph. Rabbanan savri. They want to argue even in that case. Chigatava. Boshes b'gam katava. Even when he's bringing the lawsuit and they didn't come to Beis Din yet, it doesn't make a difference. He's primarily interested, the father's interested, in collecting not the knas, the boshes and pagam, right? You have to pay also for embarrassing her and for devaluation, which is considered mammon. That was already considered financial restitution in the beginning. So therefore, he's not primarily going for the knas. He's probably going for the mammon, and therefore, even if there wasn't hamada b'din, he'd be chayav korban shvua if he swore falsely. But my kamifli, what's a machlokas between Rabbanan and Rabbi Shimon? Amar Rabbi Papa, Rabbi Shimon savar lo shavik inish midi the kids, the tava midi the low kids. Right? We have 3 things by pito. We have the knas, which is 50 silver coins, the boshes and the gam. Boshes becomes the mammon. The 50 silver coins is a knas. So primarily, Rabbi Shimon holds. Right, people primarily want, when they bring the lawsuit, they want something which is a set amount. He knows he's going to get 50 silver coins. So therefore, when he brings the lawsuit, primarily he's going after the knas. Right, he also wants to get a boshes of gam, but that's subsidiary to the main claim that he wants. So therefore, he's being tovei knas, and by knas there's no korban shvua. Rabbanan Zari He said, Rabban saying primarily you're going after the Boshes of Bagam, because Boshes of Bagam, if he admits to it at any point, he has to still pay that. However, by the Knas, if he would be Modeh, if he admits to it before the Edom come or Machayev him, so then he could pater himself. So therefore, they're primarily going after the Boshes of Bagam, along with it the Knas. So therefore, even on the Knas, you'd pay, you'd be Chayav a Korban Shvuah, even if there was no Amar B'din, even if it didn't come in court yet. It was just a lawsuit. The Gemara turns to a new discussion over here. Right, the father dies, he leaves over an estate, inheritance. Right, we know from the Torah, according to the Torah, says that only the sons inherit the father, the daughters don't inherit the father. How do you support the daughters? Right, if they're young daughters, they can't work themselves. Where do they get their meals from? So the brothers are in charge of supporting their sisters, right? So they have to be fed. They have to get their meals from their brothers. However, because they're feeding them, the brothers, what about the wages that the girl owns? She gets a job. She gets a job at Burger Bite here in Israel. I was going to say McDonald's, but Jewish girls wouldn't work at McDonald's. Technically, they'd be allowed to work at McDonald's, maybe. You get hana, because that would be a question whether you can get hana from basar b'chalav. Maybe it's only the rabbanan. Don't know, because nevela. It's a shaila in Hilchos basar b'chalav. It's also to get hana from basar b'chalav. So therefore, to get wages for working at McDonald's, maybe it's not, because they have fries and you're getting wages for other things or the work you're doing. Even if assume you're getting paid because of the basar b'chalav, right? What if it's nevela? Usually the meat there is nevela. It's considered non-kosher meat to begin with. So there we say isser chal isser, ain't isser chal isser. There's no basar b'chalav there. So maybe it's mutter bana. This brings me back to right, Koningsberg. The first year I actually got into learning. My freshman year in YU, I went from being a modern Orthodox kid to a guy who liked learning. The only guy maybe that didn't go to the gap year in Israel that from down in YU. They say usually you come back from the gap year in Israel and you become assimilate, not assimilate. You go back to your modern Orthodox ways. I went from modern Orthodoxy to Haredi in YU. It's kind of interesting. I remember Eric Koningsberg. He's now a Rosh Hashiva in Reitz. He was in BMP, which was a lower program. That was his first year. I was his first Talmud, and that was one of the first things we learned. We were talking. One of the classes was halacha. He said, "Well, I learned brachos and Shabbos. Everyone learns brachos and Shabbos." He wanted to teach us kashrus and mezuzah, hilchos mezuzah. That's what he taught us. I remember some of the things about that. It was my first experience really learning, really wanting to learn. But that was one of the things he talked about. Hilchos kashrus, isra ein isra chal isra. Anyway, she gets wages. She's working at Burger Bites. So there's no question over here. Burger Bites, a hamburger store here, a fast food store here in Israel. She's working there. Who gets the money? Who gets her wages? Do the brothers get her wages, or does she get the wages? Does she get to keep it? The Gemara is going to discuss this basically for a whole Amud over here. So let's see what the Gemara says. Are the brothers considered in the place of the father? Right? When a daughter is a katana or a nara, before she's a bogeres, her wages go to her father. And so here also the brothers are supporting her like the father. They would also get her wages. Maybe they're not comparable to the father. Here, basically, it's not the father supporting him. His estate, which they inherited, is supporting him, not directly, so maybe they shouldn't get it. So you said, Rav Sheish, back then we have a Mishnah like this. This is a Mishnah later on in Masechtas Kesubos. A widow, right? Her husband dies. She doesn't inherit her husband, right? The husband inherits the wife. The wife doesn't inherit the husband, right? His children inherit her, right? This actually happened with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law passed away a couple years ago, 3 years ago. So he didn't own much, but he did own the house that he lives in. So technically, according to halacha, right, according to Jewish law, he had 3 sons, so they inherited the house. So, my mother-in-law, she's the widow. It was a question whether she should be kicked out of the house and they could sell the house because she's fed from the assailant. They have to feed her, but she doesn't inherit her husband. So Israeli law is different. Israeli law actually believes that the wife does inherit the apartment of the father, of the husband first. So it was a long discussion. Different brothers, my brother-in-laws had different opinions about it. Anyway, presently she is living in the house, and my family is living with her to accompany her in the house. So, but according to the Torah, according to the Psak Halacha over here, that she gets fed from the Nichsa Yisrael, Ma'isi Adeh Shalahen, right? Because she's fed from them. If she makes money, if she would earn wages, my mother-in-law does have a part-time job now, so it would go to the brothers. Midami, the Gemara says, Midami. Can you compare the cases? The husband, right? When he doesn't want his widow to have a surplus, to have profits, harvacha, to have profits from her wages. He just wants her to be taken care of, right? He wants his daughter to make profits. He wants his daughter, besides the fact that she's getting sustained by the brothers, he wants her to be profitable, that she should grow up and go to university and get a great job and become an entrepreneur, right? So he wants his daughter to get a lot of money. So therefore, maybe his daughter is better. The Gemara says, "Remember the bito adifalem almanuso." Or you want to say that the daughter is better than the almana of Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Asu almana eitzal abbas, kabasi eitzal achin, v'nechasim muatim. They made the almana like the daughter by the brothers, v'nechasim muatim. Right, just like if there's meager inheritance, a small inheritance, not enough to feed both the daughters and the sons. Just like the daughter with the brothers, habas and zonas, they get the daughters end up getting the food, whatever's left over. If there's not enough for the brothers, they have to go and beg from door to door to get food. Let's say the father dies and he leaves over a wife and a daughter, right? Who gets precedence over here? The wife gets precedence. The daughter has to embarrass herself to go collect from door to door. The Gemara says, you see, the widow is more important than the daughter. The husband cares about his wife in terms of being embarrassed, right? When it comes to making profits, living a nice lifestyle, he cares more about his daughter because she has a future. His almana is probably older; she just has to survive. But his daughter, he wants to have a bright future. Rav Yosef asks the following question: Rav Sheshes, this is our Mishnah, right? It says the Maisi Adayim, her wages, and whatever she finds, right? Or whatever she finds on the streets. We'll see what that means in a second. Even though she didn't collect, even Reb Shimon's mode, if the father dies, they belong to the brother. Time with the B'chai Av. It's only because she earned those wages when the father was alive. She earned the wages after the father died. La'atzon, go to her. My love, b'nizonis. Aren't we talking about where normal cases there's enough in the state to feed the daughters? The Gemara says, "Lo b'she'ein nizonis." No, it's talking about where she's not getting fed, and therefore she gets to keep the ma'aseh adayim. Even she'ein nizonis, if she is not nizonis, right? She's not getting fed. There's not much of an inheritance left. Ma'ala meimra. Of course, right? Of course, she doesn't have to give the wages to the brothers. It's machlokas b'seches gittin, whether a master of avodim knainim, he can say to the avodim knainim, technically he owns the avodim knainim and he has to feed them. He has to feed them. If he decides, he says, "I don't want to feed you anymore, but you still have to work for me," right? You could do that according to one opinion, b'seches gittin, because you own the goof of the avodim. That's why avodim knainim looks imach. It doesn't say it should be with you. How about Eved every imach? He's a Jewish slave, right? We'll learn about that in Mesechus Kedushin. If you have a Jewish slave, you have to treat him very well. Certainly his daughter is better than Eved Ivri, and you have to treat her well. I'm a Rav Barula, right? So therefore, the daughter is like an Eved Ivri, or better than an Eved Ivri, and you can't get out of feeding them. Right, and even though we're going to learn later on, the father doesn't have to technically feed his daughter. If he doesn't feed his daughter, then she gets to keep what she has. Amar Rula Hadafa. No, the chiddush of this Mishnah is talking about she earns wages, but she earns a nice salary. She's in finance. She runs a hedge fund. She took over for Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, .72 asset management. He gave it up. He sold his company for $13 billion to this girl. We'll call her Miriam. I don't know. He said a niece named Miriam was born. So Miriam took over. She's making a lot of money in a hedge fund, right? So even though a father, right, when he decides he only has to feed his daughter, right, and if he decides not to feed his daughter, he doesn't get her wages. But if she makes extra money, she's running a successful hedge fund, the father would get it. So here, the Chiddush in this Mishnah is that only the father would get it, the brothers wouldn't get it. Amarava, Gava Rabba, Rav Yosef, L'Yoda Ika Hadafa. Rav Yosef, when he asked this question, he didn't know, right, that you could have this distinction between the father and the sons when it comes to the revach, there's extra profits. Kamosif to Yuvta. He asked the question, Amarava, Rav Yosef, Masisim Gufa Kasha. He was really asking from the Mishnah directly, the Ksani Maisi Deo Mitziyasa, Av Bishal Agabsa, Mitziyasa, Av Bishal Agabsa. Right, her Maisi wages and Mitziyasa, what she finds, right, during the father's life belong to the father. Av Bishal Agabsa, even if she doesn't actually collect, it belongs to the father, and he's Yorisha to his sons. Mitziyasa Man Gabio. What is the Mitziyah? Maisi right? You worked for somebody, they didn't pay you yet. Maisi Adeha Mitziyasa. If you find something, you already found it, it's yours. I mean, who's she collecting it from? Why did they add the word mitziyasa? Ma'aseh yadeh kim mitziyasa. It just meant to say ma'aseh are like or fine. It's mitziyasa b'chaya av la'av la'achar misa av la'atzma. Just like if she would find something, right, in her father's life, that belonged to the father. If her father died, it belonged to her. Ma'aseh yadeh now b'chaya av la'av la'achar misa av la'atzma. Shema mina. So you see, it's a good proof from there, from the fact that it writes the extra mitziyasa to teach me that dafka. After her father dies, she gets to keep it, and not like Rav Sheshes, doesn't go to the brothers. Shema mina. So that's indeed a proof. We're going to see this is the halacha. Rav paskins like this, not like Rav Sheshes. It belongs to her. Shema mina. It's marnami. I'm Ravina Marav. Basim nizos b'na'achem ma'isiyadela atzma. She gets to keep it. I'm Rav Kahana. My time. With the chsiv, yisnachaltem osav v'neichem achareichem. Talks about avodim knainim. When you die, you pass them over. Your sons inherit your avodim. Osam levnechem. There you pass over to your sons. V'lo b'no seichem levnechem. However, you don't inherit your daughters to your sons. Magid she'en adam moriz chus bito lebeno. Even though technically they have to feed them, they don't get a chus in the daughter, meaning ma'aseh yadayim. No, maskula Rabba asked the following question: how do you know it's talking about her ma'aseh yadayim, her wages, whatever she earns? Maybe it's just talking about knasos like pitoy and ones. And chavalos, right, where someone actually injures her, right? That, and there's 5 things you pay. Maybe that's why the saying doesn't go to the brothers, but the regular ma'aseh, the wages, they feed her to get the wages. Rav Chanina also had a brayse of pitoy about this miut where the Torah says only the avodim pass over and not the daughters pass over. It's only talking about special payments. The Gemara interjects, chaval started the gufan, and of course it should belong to her. Right? If you injure her, right, you knock off her arm or something like that, she's losing an arm, you have to pay her. Amar Rabbi Yosef Chanina, chavalas that was mentioned in the Braisa, that's talking about shapatza b'faneh, where she made a wound on the girl's face, right, which just devalues her value. It doesn't actually affect her ability to work or to go on in life. She has a scar on her face. So, therefore, it really should belong to, could belong to the brothers. And that's the miyut in the Braisa. Rabbi Chanina learned that the brothers don't get, but they do get a ma'aseh yadayim. It's a suggestion that the Gemara rejects it. The Gemara doesn't even answer that. The Gemara has this question, but the Gemara doesn't think much of this question because the Gemara assumes that really it's telling me that all schlusim, even ma'aseh yadayim, don't go. Any schlusim of the bas don't go to the brothers. Amar Zera, Amar Mas, Amar Rav, Amrila, Amar Zera, Amar Mas, Amar Rav, Basim Gentleman Achim ma'aseh dela atzma. Right, like the Gemara reiterates what it said. The chsivin nachaltem osav v'nechem achareichem osav v'nechem v'lo b'no seichel v'nechem magid she'en adam morish chus bito lebno. It tells you that none of the things that the father got from his daughter are passed on to the sons. They don't get that from their sister. Amali Avimi bar Papi Shakod Amra. He said Shakod, the diligent one, said this. Shakod Mana. Who is Shakod? Shmuel. Harav Amra. Like Gemara asked, what do you mean? Rav was the one who said this teaching. Ema af Shakod Amra. He adds in that also Shmuel agreed with Rav that it goes to her. Amar Mar Bar Amemar Rashi. Mar Bar Amemar said to Rav Ashi, Hachi Amina Har the Hilchas Akbas the Rav Sheshes. They said Allah Rav Sheshes that the ma'aseh yadayim do go to the brothers. Rav Ashi Amar, he says Hilchas Akbas the Rav, Hilchas Akbas the Rav. The Gemara Paskins, the halacha follows Rav, and the Maaseh Adayim remain with the daughter, even though the brothers are obligated to feed her. They're entitled to her wages, and certainly not to the extra profits that she earns. And the Mishnah says, Amare says Bito. Someone goes and he gets his daughter engaged, Vigirsha, and before they get married, there's a Gerushin, Irsav in Nisarmal. Then he goes ahead and he gets her engaged again, Nisarmalah, and the husband dies before they get married. Kesubos Shalom. Even after two of these things happen, the ksuva in both cases belong to him. We'll see that ksuva really is nischayev from the erisin already. There's a chayev to give a ksuba. He's siyav a gerusha. Let's say he married her off and she got divorced. He's siyav in his arm, and he married off again, and she became an almana. Ksuvasa shalah. She gets the ksuva according to the rabbanan for both marriages. Rabbi Yehuda Omer harishon shalav. Rabbi Yehuda says no. The first one in this case goes to the father. Amrulo, they said to him, once the father marries off even the first time, he doesn't have Rishus anymore, and therefore even the first two will go to her. So the Gemara says, time with the Hisiya Vigirsha. The reason is, it says in the Mishnah, he married her off in the divorce. Hisiya V'Nisarmala. It says two different cases. The first marriage, the husband divorced her. In the second marriage, he died. Aval Nisarmala trays in. If she got married twice, the husband died in both cases. Sulo Chazil in Sube. Then the reason the Mishnah doesn't mention that is because then she can't get married again. V'agav orche kasasim la'antana karebi da'amar b'trei zimne heavy chazaka. We learned in Masechah Zivamos, Rebbe holds 2 times the chazaka. If she married to 2 husbands, they both died predeceased her, she's called a katlanis. She's killing her husbands. Therefore, she can't get married again to anyone technically, according to Rebbe. We pass him like over here. I think that she can't get married again because we assume she'll kill her husband. Not kill her, she didn't literally kill her husband, but she has bad mazel and her husband is going to die. So therefore, only in this case she can get married again. But if it was 2 almanas, 2 dead husbands, she can't get married again. Rabbi Yehuda Omer harishon shalav. It's pretty harsh. I mean, woman, this has to be happening a lot. I mean, a woman, my grandmother, had 2 husbands that predeceased her. I mean, when her second husband was predeceased, she never got remarried again. When her second husband predeceased her, I think she was in her 70s. She never got married again. I don't know if it was because of this Gemara or just she was just older. She didn't want to get married. But we were talking about marrying her off. I don't know what the halacha is, but it seems like Gemara you can't get married a third time. My time with the Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda says from the first nisun he gets it, the second nisun he doesn't get it. Rabbi Yosef Dami Tarvai Hol b'Shas Eirisin Zacha Behena Av. Right, the ksuva is awarded from Shas Eirisin, and Shas Eirisin she was already in the rishus. She was still in the rishus of the father. Right, only nisuin she passes to the rishus of the husband. Right, we learned that when there's erisin, so the goof of the isha is nickness to the husband, but the rishus she's still in the home, the domain of her father. So partially he owns her. So therefore he gets the ksuva because when she gets engaged, she's still in his rishus. Mesiv Rab asked the following question. He says the first ksuba goes to the father. Rabbi Yehuda admits if he gets his daughter engaged while she's a ketana, bagra, and then she became not only a nara but a bogera, she got 12 and 6 months. But she got married after that. She had a long engagement. The father doesn't even get the ksuba in that case. The erisin happened when she's a ketana, so the father should get it also in that case. Ella yitmar haki yitmar. Rabba Rabbi Yosef Dami Tarvai Hol b'Shuso Nichtavin. The reason that the father gets the ksuva in the first case, usually the ksuva was written before the nisuin, but right before the nisuin, right? This is how it is nowadays. You write the ksuva right while you're waiting for the bedekin and the weddings. You write it. So the shas where the father zocha and the ksuva is in the erisin. But right when the ksuva, not when the erisin happened, not when they get engaged, but when the ksuva is actually written, which is also during the erisin, which happens right before the nisuin. So the case where she's bagra, so therefore the ksuva was written as a bagera, she has no right to it. However, the case where it was written in the erisin, she got married as a nara, so therefore the father, she wasn't in his rishus at the shas ksiva saksuva when the ksuva was written. The Gemara says umigba me'emas gabya. When does she in fact collect the ksuva? We're going to see, right, when you collect the ksuva, it's a shtar basically. It's a written document. It's a loan document. It's a chiyuv, right? He owes the money to the woman. So there's also liens on properties, right? Whenever she's able to collect the ksuba, right? That means that if the husband were to sell any properties, any houses or real estate that he has, she has a lien on those houses. That if he defaults on the payment, she can collect those houses. So when does that lien start? Amar Avuna Mana Masayim in Eirison. The mana for almana or masayim for a psula, the basic payment of a ksuba, that already starts from the Eirison, from the engagement. Tosefes minan is and if he decides to add more money, we'll learn about more Tosefes ksuba. You can add more than just the mana or masayim. So that goes at the Shas Nisuin. That the lien for that money is from the Nisuin. Rabasiyam or Echazem and Nisuin. Says both the original mana masayim, the original payment, and the Tosefes, the lien only starts from the Nisuin. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed today's shir. See you in Ian Van C, and we'll talk more about this machlokas and Rav Sheshes and Rav, whether the daughter, her Maisei Adayim, her wages go to the brothers or not. See you in Ian Van C, coming up next.